one of the guys from my job, he runs the back shop, and he was talking to me because he is a big fan of the podcast. But he doesn't enjoy a long form podcast.
Okay.
He actually is one of our few. He's one of the few people that just watches the clips.
Okay.
So he doesn't even have Facebook. He just uses YouTube, and and he can just look. Like he just whenever it pops up in his newsfeed, he just clicks it and listens to the stuff. And
that's funny, huh?
He talked to me the other day about Joe Rogan because he kind of listens to a lot of comedians' podcasts, and that's kind of his forte.
Yeah.
And recently, your favorite comedian, by the way, watch his new special. Not a huge fan. It was okay.
Yeah, it was all
like
right.
Average. But Chris D'Elia went on his podcast. Went on Joe Rogan's podcast and then went on another podcast where he kind of did like a Zoom situation.
Sure.
And it revealed that he was tested for coronavirus before going on the podcast.
No way. Chris D'Elia
on the Joe Rogan podcast. Yeah, Chris D'Elia was tested for corona because Joe Rogan tests all of his guests before they get into the
for some reason
area.
I thought you were saying that he was tested and he was positive for coronavirus, but what you're saying is that
he was tested before entering the podcast.
Dude, have you seen how they fucking test for the coronavirus? You've probably seen it. I mean, so many people have seen it. It's the same way for the flu.
No, I haven't seen it.
No,
I actually have not seen it.
Dude, I think you would freak out about it. It's like a Q-tip, this fucking long, dude. And
it's when they scrub your brain, dude.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like,
Dad
what
told
the
me.
Fuck, dude. I saw it actually, funny enough, because fucking your boy's trying to get TikTok famous right now. I saw it on TikTok of this guy, and he, like, filmed himself getting it, and there was fucking blood on the end of the Q-tip, and she's like, oh, yeah, that's just, like, it's just, like, a side effect, like, or not a side effect, but, like, something that happens when you get tested for coronavirus, and that's, like, literally the fucking equivalent of a dentist like flossing you and making you bleed and going, you don't floss enough. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Fucking
you don't
gross.
scrub your brain enough to be part of it.
You don't get tested enough for coronavirus.
So Joe Rogan is paying for tests for all of his guests.
Oh wow.
And Chris D'Elia was talking about it on this podcast called the Build Series, but it's a non-FDA approved test.
Huh.
So the doctor that does it is part of a concierge part of the concierge MDLA, and it's a premium provider of high-end on-demand and personalized Medicare in LA.
Yeah.
So if you're a rich person, I guess it's pretty much what it is. You're able to request certain things where like you have a private doctor that just takes care of you on demand.
That's so weird.
So it's and on the website. So if you go to Concierge MDLA, you could scroll down as to like what they provide.
Sure.
The coronavirus test is on there, and it's $299 for a nasal swab test and an antibody test.
A brain swab test?
And the guy said he's tested over 300 people, and 5% of people that were asymptomatic tested positive for coronavirus. Out of the 300 that he tested, like in the concierge, not the Joe Rogan podcast. But there was a lot of people in an outrage because
he's buying up all the tests.
Yeah,
there's people.
Like,
there's people that need the test,
but like at the same, he's not taking away from tests. Because it's a test that he's paying for. He's paying for. That's what insurance does. It pays for your like medical care.
Yeah, sure.
So if you're privately funding it rather than you're doing it by you instead of by like your insurance. It should be okay. And he's not like buying up like hundreds and hundreds of masks, or the people that bought like the 33,000 bottles of hand sanitizer to try to resell it for a profit. But it's people were bashing him for like having all these coronavirus tests while people don't have them.
Yeah.
But I guess the coronavirus tests are plentiful, so it's not like, you know.
Yeah, I think they are now, but the weird thing about that is that if he's testing everyone and it's not FDA approved, what like how can you tell if it works if it's not FDA approved?
Exactly.
So that's weird to begin with.
So that's
to be
where
able
people are upset. They're upset that like you know, because first he's doing a bunch of coronavirus, so people are blaming him for not having enough for everyone else. 2, people are upset because it's not FDA approved, so it's like, all right, what do the tests prove for you? Like, it does nothing for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's some people defending him and going, well, he's not hurting anyone. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like some of the guests are going on the podcast without really, you know, like blindly going into it and assuming that this non-FDA approved test is gonna yay or nay them to be on the podcast, while like you're kind of putting people in injury. But he also, Joe Rogan is one of those people that believes in taking fucking mushrooms and going on a trip and then being healed. You know what I mean? Like, he's not really the FDA guy.
As Moses pointed out, he's a he prefers to call himself a shaman, not a doctor. Apparently, the guy
shaman,
a shaman, a shaman, dude, swimming in the water, getting fucking eaten by fishes. He's a shaman.
But yeah, I didn't know how you felt about that, because I know. I don't even know how you feel about Joe Rogan as a whole.
I'm not a huge Joe Rogan fan. Funny enough, dude. So I stumbled onto a Joe Rogan clip.
Right, I don't know if this applies to you with the podcast, and not to cut you off, but
yeah, go ahead.
Whenever you tell someone, oh, hey, I'm doing a podcast, the first thing people do is, oh, I listen to Joe Rogan.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing. I don't find Joe Rogan entertaining. I don't know who the fuck Joe Rogan is. I know he was an MMA fighter. I know he fucking hosted Fear Factor. I know he did like TV stuff. But besides that, like, I don't understand why Joe Rogan has like the fame that he has
the following either.
Yeah, the following, exactly. And I think it's just because like he doesn't do anything, so he's able to reach out to all those big people. I think he might just be like a good medium, like a foundational podcast that people go to him, and he just got picked out of one of the only people, and now he's just fucking, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. I think what it is, I think with Joe Rogan is because I think what happened is he was ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
So he was on podcasts like 10 years ago, and he did one once a day, multiple times a day. I mean, I used to listen to him because I used to enjoy not necessarily him. I used to enjoy his guests.
Yes,
and
exactly.
The thing about the long form podcast is you get to learn someone a little bit more than you would, you know, like just watching them on Jimmy Kimmel talk for 2 minutes about, you know, like a PR approved story.
Yeah.
So I think that I enjoy, like, I like the Neil deGrasse Tyson episode I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
And I like a bunch of comedians I learned through just watching Joe Rogan, and kind of that was the foundation of whether or not it was going to be of interest. I know he does a Sober October, which is very big with like Bert Kreischer, Ari Shaffir, and there's someone else I'm missing that I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. But what they do is every October they all of them put Fitbits on, or something along the lines of a Fitbit. They all go sober for a month, no weed, no drinking, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And which is interesting because Joe Rogan, a lot of his podcast is driven by the whiskey he shares with his, you know, his whoever he's interviewing.
See,
which I find really cool.
I didn't even know he did that.
I mean, with the guests that like whiskey, he'll pop, you know, he'll break out a bottle that he has to like kind of drink with his guests.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting because you really get to know someone when they have a drink, and then or they'll smoke weed together, and that's why the whole Elon Musk thing happened, where like
is that where that meme comes from?
Yeah, he was on
shit.
Joe Rogan.
No way.
So he was being interviewed by Joe Rogan, and he goes, you know, like, do you want to smoke weed? And he goes, yeah, I smoke weed. And he goes, well, you know, I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Would you want to smoke one? And then they both lit up at the same time, and they smoked weed. And then within like the hour, like Tesla's stocks plummeted at like oh, I don't know, like 50% or whatever. And then it also they made him like they were fighting like this battle against everyone because they didn't want him to be the CEO or the speaker or whatever, the chairman.
Yeah.
Like they didn't want him to be the head of it or representation for the company.
Sorry, so it just cut out a little bit.
So, but that Joe Rogan has such a big audience that like you think about how many millions of people see. I think about like, so Kat recently, my girlfriend, she got 200,000 views on a TikTok.
Yeah.
And 200,000 fucking people is a lot of people. You think about my shows I used to do, which was like we would cap at like 300-400 people or whatever at most. Multiply that by 500 buildings like that, or whatever, or 5,000 buildings like that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, that's how many fucking people just watch hers. Now take Joe Rogan's podcast that gets millions of views.
Millions,
that's insane. Insane to think about.
Yeah, he's just a good medium format to, like, I know the long podcast is, although I do it, it's not like something that I really enjoy watching. I enjoy doing it, but I don't enjoy watching it as much.
Well, you enjoy listening to it.
Yeah. I can have it like audio, but like I can't personally, if it's Joe Rogan just doing his own thing, I can't do it. But I've gone to him to be able to figure out guests. Or like, I get a better understanding on
when
guests.
He does like presidential candidates. I think that's really interesting because during the debates, everyone gets like a quick 2-minute shot to like do like a quick excerpt that's gonna go viral on Twitter. Yeah. And then everyone can defend Bernie, or everyone can defend this candidate or that candidate.
I don't want to fucking ruin your train of thought, but you know what I watched? And I didn't even have it in my cards, but it's fucking hilarious, is that Bernie Sanders went on Instagram Live with Cardi B.
No way!
Yeah, dude. And then she was asking, oh, why did you step down? And I watched, I think 5 minutes of it or something. I don't think it was much longer than that. But I was watching it and I was fucking cracking up because she was like, oh, why'd you step down? And, Bernie Sanders obviously saying that, I need to make sure that the better candidate for... Or the most
Trump.
Yeah, exactly. To get Trump out of office, we need to have all of our fucking eggs in one basket. So I stepped down. But it was like him talking to Cardi B, dude. Cardi B's got 9-inch nails on her fucking each of her fingertips, and she's just talking to Bernie. She's like, Bernie, and he's just like, fucking dude. It was weird,
dude.
Cardi B and Bernie Sanders. You gotta go check it out, dude. I was fucking cracking up, and I was talking to Joanna about it. I was like, dude, this is so fucking funny. Like two people you would think would never ever talk to each other.
I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast, but speaking of unlikely guests, the thing that blew my mind was when Joe Rogan interviewed Edward Snowden, dude. Did you see that?
Oh, no. I don't have any interest in that, dude. A fucking Russian spy,
had a 3-hour interview with Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
And got his whole background and talked to him Edward Snowden's in freaking Russia.
Yeah.
Being he doesn't have his immunity to come back to the States yet. He's fighting for it apparently. Yeah. And he was interviewing him through Zoom or Skype or something like that, and having Edward Snowden just talk about why he became America's #1 enemy and stuff like that.
Dude, I would fucking cheese, dude. Because, all right, so for those of you that don't know, while we're doing this for the next couple of weeks and we're still in quarantine and lockdown, Justin and I have been talking about having different guests on, whether they're friends that are across the country or what may have you. But dude, that would be fucking goals to just interview someone so fucking random on a Zoom meeting and be like, yo, can you chime in for our podcast for an hour? And
dude, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about just reaching out to random people that have genuine interest in.
Yeah.
Just to Zoom. But I know there's a couple of guests that we have in mind. One of them being in our comments right now, probably person who's commenting the most, and our buddy out in one buddy from California and one buddy from New Orleans and now Texas.
Yeah,
I think would be two good guests to have, because the thing about being in the quarantine and Zoom life, it's now it's all right, fuck it, now is the time to get guests on that we couldn't get, and we don't want to ruin the integrity of an in-person podcast.
Sure.
With a Zoom guest, you know what I mean? Unless it was something huge or major.
Yeah.
Me and you work well. Our dynamic works well, in close proximity. So, right now, because we're limited to what we can do, now it makes sense to Zoom because we're on Zoom.
Yeah.
So it would be cool to just I don't know, just throw in a random. I need to talk to you after the podcast, but I think we should grab one of them for next week.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. That'd be fucking nasty.